Surprise, surprise! Folks are mad with Dragonflight's ending even though it's still months away, and 10.2.5 dropped its first build featuring your usual little updates and is just casually changing WoW forever. Hey, it's Soul, and welcome back to Warcraft Weekly. Make fun of yourself, please be funny. Hit the like button, subscribe for the coverage, catch me live for a chat, and let's start off easy, and with no spoilers, people's reactions to the end of the Emergency raid and the Emerald Dream campaign. The haters are mad, the shills are mad, and everyone's mad over... Okay, I'm gonna do a tiny spoiler, okay? Tiny spoiler alerts, are we good? Okay, we're good. So, all I'm spoiling really is that at the end of the raid, when Farok is defeated, there's no death rattle, there's no extended monologue, there's no last drips of Matt Mercer to pleasure your ears. He's simply defeated, followed by a cinematic to forward the story, and then a quest line to, forward the story, and then lots of fanfare to... You know what I mean. Many were understandably upset for a few reasons. That's one, Emergency is the final raid. Farok is the final raid boss. And folks are like, okay, this is the big bad and that's it. Number two, the questing afterwards is significant. And I'm definitely not going to get into the actual content of that questing, but simply that it is significant. And it doesn't appear that it'll be accessible until after you complete the raid and the quest associated with it. It's still only the first week of the season, mind you. For all we know, they may simply open up this questline next week, but as we see it right now, it does look like the end of this campaign is locked behind completing the raid. Now, I invite you to share your thoughts and reactions to that in the comments, and as usual, I'm gonna go first, sharing my views through my super awesome Copium filter, which, by the way, looks like this. When I saw the cinematic, I thought to myself, oh, this is almost like a total throwback to the last raid of Cataclysm. I mean, our backs to the wall, so to speak. Deathwing's just moments away from destroying Azeroth as we know it, and when his HP goes to zero, the aspects, they swoop in, to do the real work, and then there's this very, very campy cutscene.
The Cataclysm is over.
Oh, what beautiful cringe. And from that raid cinematic, I processed the Emergency cinematic in the same way. It's pretty campy, it's very positive, and it's hopeful for the future, and it's followed by this epilogue of questing, not just for a major part of the Dragonflight story, but for the Night Elves, whose story is clearly intertwined with Emergency, it goes without saying. But as the WoW team has been trying to pound into our heads, the Dragonflight story is not done. Next week, there's going to be more story. In 10.2.5, there's going to be more story, and there are going to be 2 more content patches after that, and then the War Within. I think folks are still stuck in a certain mindset where the defeat of the final boss and the final raid is it, and it's got to be conclusive. It's got to wrap everything up, and this post-raid cinematic did not do that. Now, I liked Farok, and he made himself out to be the kind of villain that you love to hate, but he didn't feel like the big bad of Dragonflight. And looking back, there was no attempt to really make him try to feel like it, and it made Dragonflight as a whole seem anticlimactic, at least up to this point. But we haven't seen the whole. We can't really look back quite yet. The WoW team has made it super clear that their goal is to redefine the lull, where now there's basically no lull outside of swapping a new raid out for a so-called fated season where, all the previous raids are lined up together and we can just have at it, along with a PvP and a Mythic Plus season, and this time it seems more story for everyone and outdoor activities. We're not done yet, that's the point. And the challenge is whether fans will be happy with an expansion experience that has a kind of a rolling hill sort of story where it slowly comes up and then it goes towards what's next, versus the old times where you had this build up and then big old climax and then boom, 8 to 10 months of nothing. But without a doubt, it sure sucks that lots of folks feel locked out of taking their characters through the end of a story because a raid is standing in their way, and for their own reasons, they don't just blast through it in the first few hours. In this season, Raid Finder is opening up faster than it ever has been, with the first wing opening this week and the raid being fully unlocked at the week of December 12th. So that's going to mean 1 wing each week before a 2-week gap, and then the final wing. It's faster, most definitely. But knowing that we can access this final questline after just completing the raid, no time is fast enough. Once again, I'm reacting to this as we see it. For all we know, the questline could be accessible by next week, and that was the plan the entire time. But I'm not fond of the wait, and I totally get it when people are clamoring for Raid Finder difficulty to be fully open at the same time as normal and heroic and mythic. But I also think to myself that the WoW team has certain intentions with the way that they want to present their game and to the story to people. It's not entirely a gear thing, like, no, we don't want big 3 players to be forced to clear Raid Finder every week for the purpose of gear. I mean, that certainly is a reason, but not the reason. And I had to really think through, why isn't Raid Finder just laid out like everything else? The answer, at least in my head at least, is that the WoW team is trying to simulate a feel of progression based on how fast or slow it can take for a raid team to clear the normal version of the raid. Now I know this sounds weird, it's going to take a little bit to process this, but hear me out. Like, what if Raid Finder did open up immediately, week 1 of the season? Well, of course, a lot of people are going to run it immediately and clear the whole thing in one sitting if possible. And you know what, that's fine, because there are teams who can clear the normal raid in like an hour or so. Why shouldn't everyone have the same opportunity? But then I wonder to myself, doesn't that cross a line? Is that opportunity that I'm talking about, or more like obligation? Because it's one thing for really geared teams with comms who read the boss strats ahead of time to quickly just plow through a new raid, but it's another thing to just normalize that behavior because it's that easy to do. Doesn't that sort of redefine the World of Warcraft raiding experience into this kind of go mentality, even among people who are just there for the story? Now, I'm sure to some this sounds baffling, but I often read messages and comments from people who take weeks, maybe months to progress through normal raid difficulty for numerous reasons, and I imagine that the WoW team knows that. They can see those kinds of things. But many don't see that, or they dismiss the needs of players who, frankly, don't really have a voice. Now, I'd like to think that opening up half of Raid Finder the first week, and then the second half the second week, that seems reasonable, but I'm willing to bet that the Raid Finder schedule is mostly data-driven. Now, of course, I don't have any data on my person, I'm just guessing here, but the WoW team has got to be reading that on some average, it should roughly take a month or so for a given raid team to clear the normal or the heroic versions of the raid, and they made the Raid Finder schedule based on that. Now, that said, we can sidestep this entire lockout conversation. Maybe it just doesn't matter. The Emerald Dream questline is tied directly to the immediate end of the raid, but I would prefer that future campaigns like this, that they do something different, as in, not lock the story behind the raid and then ta-da, problem solved. Time gating it would have been better in this case, because it would have been an everyone sort of experience rather than just a raiders first, followed by the data miners, followed by the people who read Wowhead and look at YouTube stuff, and then the rest eventually. But I'd also, I guess I would also challenge some players too to at least consider hopping into Raid Finder when it's up where possible, because raids are part of the story. There is a certain feel of that. I don't want to see the discourse cause a shift in philosophy where raid content is going to be considered a side quest that can be ignored. Now, I know I covered a bunch of different things here, but now the floor is yours. What are your thoughts? The highly anticipated 10.2.5 patch dropped its first build on the PTR this week, along with a preview that included items that approximately no one expected. Let's start with what we fully expected. Dragon riding throughout the old world, for example. It simply works. You hop on, you start flying, and go, have fun. Draktyr also have full dragon riding through their soar ability with full vigor and dragon riding talents and everything. One catch though, dragon riding overall is 20% lower in legacy zones compared to the Dragon Isles. Now, it's easy to get mad at the announcement that to improve the experience of dragon riding due to legacy zones being smaller and more dense, outside of the Dragon Isles, it's going to have a top speed reduction of 20%, which you may have already reacted with, like, ill. And that was my reaction too. Now, I logged on to the BTR, I went to Orgrimmar, I left town, and I told myself, nope, I totally feel it, this sucks, it's not right. And while testing, I went off to Netherstorm over in Outland to try out the Outland Cup, which, along with that, and I think Northrend, I think that's also going to come in this patch. And while flying over, I was like, okay, I'm going to do a race, just so I can feel how much faster it is to race, and then feel the horror of going back to the slow, minus 20% speed flying thing ill. And during the race, I did in fact have my full dragon riding speed back thanks to an add-on that was tracking it, but I also barely noticed the speed difference. You know what? I was wrong. Now that I'm like doing like one thing over another and all that, or now that I'm kind of going back and forth, I'm not really feeling it. This is Dragon Racing. I should be going fast, and I was going fast, and then the race ended, and I was still on my dragon riding mount, and I was going 20% slower, and still I didn't notice. So maybe, fine. Maybe it's not so bad after all. More story stuff is happening too. Gilneas is going to be retaken in a questline that I hope has a similar vibe to the retaking of Lordrun for the Forsaken. And by that I mean a questline that feels kind of epic but not too serious, like a vibe that feels celebratory, not unlike what we get from Heritage Armor quests, because at least the way that the Lordrun quest felt, it felt very Warcraft to me, if that makes any sense. There's going to be some outdoor activities, there's going to be more story to wrap up our time in the Dragon Isles. Troll and Draenei are going to get some more customizations. There are a bunch of new models coming in an update for the Love is in the Air event that I'm just going to all post in a slideshow here. And one quick thing I want to note, and warning, I'm kind of fear-mongering here. With warbands and account-wide stuff coming in the War Within expansion, it's expected that as a broad philosophy, we, as players, probably shouldn't expect to need to roll multiple characters to farm the currencies as if that's like the thing we're supposed to do. That goes for player power as well as maybe cosmetics like holidays. These days it's a pretty common practice to double dip on current systems, that is to use multiple characters to farm up currencies individually to unlock appearances, transmog, and pets that are shared across the account. It may not be long until that practice is killed off as warbands are implemented and some other method takes its place. Maybe I shouldn't be making you worry, this might not happen, but the next time a holiday does roll around, maybe consider how far behind you are and consider employing these tactics while you still can. But overall, hey, cool, we're getting quality of life boosts, we're getting story and cosmetics, and one more thing, WoW might be changing everything. Solo AI dungeons are going to redefine World of Warcraft, is what lots of folks are saying, and I'm here to kind of mess with the energy. AI related stuff has been kind of sort of creeping its way into WoW patches during this expansion, and it's culminated into this full-on feature where one can queue up for normal difficulty, Dragonflight dungeon stuff with 1 to 4 players and just run it like it's a regular thing, replacing empty party slots with NPCs. These NPCs are powered with tech similar to what we've seen from Island Expeditions, the Araki Basin Comstop, and Torghast, for you mages familiar with that particular anima power. I went in on the PTR, and for a very first public build, I was pretty impressed. Here are some highlights. Toggle to allow a follower to lead the way. Okay, lead the way. Oh, no, you don't lead the way. Let's see if I can get the AI killed. Go, slay them! Yes! Come on, let's go. No? Hey guys, come on. This way, team. Woo. Yeah, come on, this way. Yeah, this way, walk through that. You idiots. I gotta say, for a normal difficulty dungeon and the first public build on the PTR, this is pretty functional. I mean, consider the scope here. The dungeons themselves have mechanics, but nothing overly complicated or demanding on throughput. But the AI is still pretty impressive, with the tank positioning to grab mobs and DPS that tend to run around and jump around all silly. It feels kind of natural. And the dungeon run, it feels like a dungeon, complete with maybe loot dropping for you at normal difficulty. When I talk about it in this limited scope, which is the level 60 to 70 space, normal difficulty dungeons and loot, this feature is like great. It's fantastic, I love it, and it's got nothing but pluses because as it is, it's clearly targeted towards the specific type of player who is interested in this level band and difficulty and playing with potentially no one else. The target audience, I'd argue, is people who would otherwise not do dungeons at all if not for this, because they prefer to experience the dungeon at their own pace, without feeling bad telling strangers, hey, can we like slow down when they are trying to go. It's for that person who has to complete that dungeon for a recipe or a quest line, or to just understand the story for themselves. It's for a kid taking their parent to the Warcraft universe for the first time to get a taste of their very first dungeon experience without feeling rushed. It's for that person who's going to try out a new class or spec or role, but they're not quite ready to debut it in front of real people, at least not yet. It's for people like me who are trying to get that stupid ass transmog and, oh man, it didn't drop again, screw it, I'm gonna leave the group and, jump back in again, and I don't feel bad abandoning everyone. When this was announced and I covered it, I got more than a few comments from folks who were like, dude, this is gonna get me to play dungeons. So for those who are like, ill, this is going to ruin the MMO experience, no. The scope of this feature will open up an opportunity for people who you will probably never run into anyway, who are not part of your MMO experience. They just want to play a part of the game for themselves. I really want to see this feature grow, but I also want to be very careful with how I talk about this because folks have lots of different ideas. Some folks are like, hey dude, let's expand and add heroic difficulty to these AI dungeons. Let's add mythic difficulty. Let's add mythic plus. Let's give folks a path to get better and stronger gear, cooler rewards. Let's make this basically an alternative to endgame. Meanwhile, we have folks who hate this feature, not for what it is, but what they fear it could become, especially if it awards better than just normal mode gear. These folks would accuse WoW of being an always online but solo gaming experience, an un-MMO. Of course, this ignores the fact that the Big Three community made the likes of GearScore and Radar.io and WeakAuras to shave away forms of communication and make WoW feel like a solo gaming experience anyway, but hey, those are tools necessary to make the experience easier, right? So I don't want to get into those conversations really, because frankly, I just don't see a desire for the WoW team to let AI dungeons be any more tougher or give anything better than normal difficulty dungeon gear. Better gear can be found from outdoor content, from weekly quests and events, to from delves in the War Within, from whatever fangled thing they cook up in mid-season patches in future expansions. There's no need to have AI dungeons compete for gear, but they can still be elevated as a standalone feature for interested players to enjoy. To do that, we just need to not get distracted by item level or difficulty. So let's talk about how to make this feature cool all by itself. Some of you may be familiar with Final Fantasy XIV and one of its recently fleshed out features, the Trust System. It is basically AI dungeons all over its game. When its most recent expansion, Endwalker, released, when I was told that I had to complete a dungeon in order to progress through the main story, I had the option to find a group or to play with AI, and every time I played with the AI to see what it was like. The difference is that I could kind of choose the characters who were in my AI party, and throughout the dungeon there's like a bit of banter between the characters as you progress through. It let me get a little bit of context of the dungeon itself, and sometimes I got a playful exchange of character reactions. Later playthroughs would give like cosmetic unlocks, and between that and their version of transmog, that's where the replay value is really. And it works just fine. The trust system is absolutely fine. Now what can WoW do? Hopefully some of the same thing. I think it would be really neat if AI dungeons were eventually applied game-wide so people could have the option to go into these dungeons with NPCs, and they could add a little bit of flavor, a little bit of context as to the dungeon that they're going into. Right now, the NPCs that come along are part of the Dragon Scale expedition, but who would come with us to, say, King's Rest, or Upper and Lower Karazhan, or Wailing Caverns, or Scarlet Monastery, or more? There's tons of room for storytelling bits that we'll be able to enjoy at our own time and pace. I'm totally down with teaming up with NPCs related to the dungeon, but I would love to choose my own too. Like, I would love to bring my followers from the Garrison or the Order Hall. That would be pretty sweet. I think it would be wild to bring my own alts. I mean, I'm gonna have a warband in the next expansion. How about bringing some of them? And if I can do an AI dungeon with my alts, with my warband, there's a chance maybe I could get a piece of warbound gear that I'd be able to throw into my warband bank or whatever. Then my alts would be able to go in and get whatever they want. That would be freaking awesome. And also limited in scope because again, it's just normal gear. Just a reminder, the idea here is to keep the scope narrow so we can build things up. Going in this direction, it allows for a lot of ideas in other spaces. Or how about this? If I can choose the NPCs that come along with me, let me gain some reputation with them that, of course, is shared across the account, and then from that, I could unlock appearances for them or for myself, maybe unlock additional quests so I can learn more about that character? Or what if I can bring a certain character to a certain dungeon or a combination of characters, and then it opens up some special flavor text or dialogue or an encounter or a piece of cosmetic gear, a toy, a mount? This could be super amazing and cool as like another thing to do. And I get it. We want more of everything. We want better everything. We don't want resources taken away from the things that are most important to us, but I just see so much potential here for casual storytelling and roleplay and new pipelines for rewards and different ways to customize our experience that is really hard to ignore now that we're getting a little taste of it. But for now, we got to pull it all the way back to what has been announced, and this is what we've got. We've got a zero friction solo dungeon experience with rewards capped at max level normal stuff. What do you think, and what direction do you think this might go? That's going to be the show, and we did it! Prisoners of Warcraft, my guild. We're champions of the dream. Farrak got rolled, and hey, where's the content, huh? So, this was only normal difficulty, but it felt pretty good still. Except that, at least logistically, we had a full raid as we hit, we hit capacity, and some people, they couldn't come along. It was really wild. Like, I haven't seen numbers like this since season 1 of Shadowlands, when we're all wide-eyed and innocent. But now I'm seeing numbers like this in the last new raid of the expansion. It kind of tells me something about my team's interest, at least. But I imagine folks are back to slowly start getting themselves caught up, not quite realizing that there's still more expansion to go with a lot more to look forward to. Clearly, whether it's new features or just more story and updates and transmog. I know I've been saying this way too much, but it just feels pretty exciting to be a WoW player these days, with a lot to enjoy, and whether you're feeling it too, or if you're just experiencing it through me, I appreciate the company. So let's give a tremendous thanks to our family over on Twitch. Your support over the past few weeks has been absolutely phenomenal, amazing, awesome, great. And next week we're going to be back on a normal stream schedule so I can make more videos and maybe rest a little bit. We do have a holiday coming up next week, so unless there's going to be like some really big news coming up, you can expect this Saturday video to take a break. And of course, thanks to our super awesome patrons who keep supporting me. You guys are great, and a big welcome to newcomer Joshua. Thank you for helping out. And of course to you viewer, hey, you made it to the end, you fed the algorithm, and now all you got to do is like this video, subscribe for more WoW coverage, drop by on Twitch every now and then. You just might enjoy yourself, and otherwise you have a terrific weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.